Hey guys, I'm going to be doing a shootout between two digital sports watches. I ordered both these watches on Amazon. I liked the look of both of them. Couldn't decide, so I decided to buy both of them and then decide after I got them which one I would return. So figured I'd share my thoughts on them in case you were between either of these watches and you could use any information that I've gathered to make your decision. So first I'm going to start off with the G-Shock history. I actually didn't even know any of this until I got these, and I figured it'd be a cool thing to add to the videos. The G-Shock was actually a project that Casio started in 1981, and the designer's goal was what he called a triple 10 goal. And so the three 10 goals were a 10-year battery life, a 10-meter drop resistance, so taking this watch up 30 feet and being able to drop it and it still function, and then third, a 10-bar water resistance. So most watches up to that point had been fairly fragile, not able to withstand those, certainly all three of those parameters, and they were having a really tough time. Had spent months and months trying to achieve this. And it took the designer being at a playground and watching a kid playing with a rubber ball to kind of have a aha moment. And so they ended up putting the movement and the important guts of the watch in a suspended resin, and that was able to kind of take the brute of the force and help him achieve the other two metrics as well. So they started the project in 1981, but finally came out with their first watch in 1983, the GW5000, and I just thought that was pretty cool. I didn't know that until I actually got this in the mail and saw the 1983 on here. That's the year I was born, so that's kind of a cool little fun fact about that. And obviously the design has changed over the years, the last 32 years, but they still have some watches that share a lot of the design of those original ones, as well as some kind of out there newer ones as well. Timex, the Ironman right here, the history of that is also fairly cool too. I mean, Timex has obviously a very rich history of making watches. They started a triathlon line, not the specific Ironman line, but the triathlon line in 1984. So just about the same time as the G-Shock, and they were fairly successful with that. But then 2 years later, in '86, they partnered with the company Ironman, the famed long triathlons. They used their signature colors. They came out with their signature watches, and that kind of boosted their sales, kind of got them a little shot in the arm, so to speak. And they've been obviously successful with it for the past 30 years and have different iterations of the watch. And then 92 was kind of one of their bigger years with the Indiglo electroluminescence. A lot of people kind of know the Ironman line for the Indiglo. I remember I had an Indiglo when I was a kid, and that's part of the reason I wanted to try this. I think when I ordered them, I kind of thought that I might like the G-Shock better, but I wanted to get this one to see if kind of reminded me of the watch I had when I was a kid. So this one's also really cool too, in that it's at least for me, it's worn by a lot of my favorite college football coaches. Kind of like a no-nonsense watch. It can get wet. It can, it's not super expensive. This watch here is, I think, $33 on Amazon with free shipping. They have less expensive models and more expensive models depending on what you want, but it's cool. It's super practical. It's really easy to read. So, but we'll get into that in a second. It's also, I think Bill Clinton actually had one of these too, which is kind of neat. So let's go ahead and get into some of the kind of the specs or the differences. Now this watch right here is the G-Shock Tough Solar, and you can have this on Amazon for $76.84, free shipping. The specific model number is the GW6900-1. It's 53 millimeters wide, which seems really wide. I'm going to put it on my wrist. I have a 7-inch wrist, and I think that it wears a lot smaller than 53 millimeters. Obviously my other watches are nowhere near 53. I don't even have a 43, and but I think that this one, it kind of jets out at a certain point, and so it wears a lot smaller than 53. And So there's kind of what it looks like on a 7-inch wrist. You can see it fits really well. There's some air kind of at the end of the lugs, but all in all, it fits really well. And I think, measuring it from widest point to widest point kind of makes that number a little bit jacked. It's not really that big. So 53 millimeters wide, it's 17 millimeters thick, and then it can go down 660 feet. So it's twice the water resistance of the Timex. It's got an atomic function, so I've actually never set the time on this. You open it up out of the box and it's set. It just contacts the atomic clock, keeps that in check. It went through a date change for fall last weekend, and woke up in the morning and boom, it was already set. They both have similar functions in that they have stopwatches and laps. They both have glows. We'll get into that later, but they're very similar apart from the solar function and the atomic function. So kind of going function to function, I would say that the G-Shock obviously has it beat. I would give it like a 9, whereas the Timex I would give like an 8. I think the atomic function is really cool. Obviously you're going to pay for that. It is a more expensive watch. It's $76 versus $33. But if that's something that's important to you, I think it's really handy. Also too, the solar function is really cool. You can see the leftmost dial here has a high, medium, low, and a CHG on there. That means charge. It's still on high. I've read a couple people on Amazon's reviews, and they were saying that theirs got really low and it took a couple days in direct sunlight to get it back to high. I think that's probably more the exemption than the norm. So I would think that it should recharge a lot quicker than that. I've had it for 2 weeks now, and do have a lot of sunlight where I live, and it's never strayed from high. But that doesn't mean that where you live you may get sometimes where it goes to medium and you need to put it in the sun or put it in your dashboard for a day or so to get that back up to high if you want to keep it at high. But I just like the fact that you'll never have to change the battery unless it just stops accepting the charge. I like that it has a replaceable strap here. It's got 2 screws on the side, kind of in place of having a traditional spring bar, whereas the Timex, it's just kind of built in. I'm not aware of any way to change it, although someone may be able to correct me. So that's one thing I really like about the G-Shock. So yeah, so function-wise, I'd give the G-Shock a 9 and the Timex a 10, or excuse me, an 8. Style, I think that the Timex is basic, which is cool in its own right. It's got kind of these faux Allen key bolts here on the front, which I could probably do without, but you may think differently. And then the G-Shock obviously has a lot more. It's kind of a lot more of an extreme design, really tough looking. I like those 3 little sub dials. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the side of the Millennium Falcon, actually, with the little partitions in it, or it kind of like has an automotive feel as well with all the dials on the dashboard. One of my favorite cars is a Spiker, a Dutch convertible with a BMW engine, and it's got a ton of dials that kind of just look like that. So I don't know, I kind of like that little touch, even though some people may like having a bigger time display. Obviously the Timex has a lot bigger time display, so if that's kind of your main gripe, you definitely want to go with the Timex. It's a lot easier to read at a quick glance, although I would say that the G-Shock was easier for me to read in the nighttime, and we'll get into that later. We'll do a Lume shot. And then getting into the build, I think that they're both really tough. One thing with the G-Shock I've thought of is if and when you bump this into something, you're never going to damage the buttons. The buttons are recessed from the actual edges of the watch. So this part right here is going to take the scuffing versus the actual buttons taking the scuffing. Same thing with this the light up function here. Whereas the Timex, the buttons are the most exposed part of the watch. So anything that you rub up to on the side could end up chewing up these buttons. So that was one thing that I was kind of concerned about. And also, from what I can tell, the inability to change the strap. That was one thing that the more I thought about it, the more I kind of liked the idea of the G-Shock. Value, I'd give them both a 10 for value. I mean, obviously the Timex is half the price, but you know, you're getting, I think, very similar in terms of the functions. It just doesn't have the atomic capabilities nor the solar charging. So I'm going to do another wrist shot with the Timex so you can see them both compared. So value, I gave them both a 10. Build, I gave the Casio G-Shock a 9, and then I gave the Timex Ironman an 8. But again, I think a little bit of that is you get kind of what you pay for. So there's the Timex. So a really nice fit. If you're kind of squeamish about a little bit bigger, a bigger watch like the Casio, I think that the Timex would be better. I mean, this one has the sleek, the sleek look. It's all black. A lot of their other models have a lot of colors on them, which can clash with a lot of things. I wanted something that was simple, that was kind of neutral, and wasn't going to kind of clash with a lot of stuff. So that was kind of my reasoning in picking these two options. So both very cool. So why don't we go ahead and do a quick Lume shot so you can see the difference, because that was one other thing that I thought was a significant difference between the two. Okay, we're going to do the Lume on the G-Shock first. I apologize for it being blurry. It's hard to get it to focus in the dark. You can see the 3 subdials up at the top and then the main display down at the bottom. And it's just real easy to read in the dark. I think it's easier to read than the Timex. You can make your own decision. But you can see it's more of a backlight kind of backing up the dark colors. It's high contrast. It's just real simple. So now here's the shot of the Timex Ironman Indiglo. You can see that it's kind of it's the reverse. It's a light number with a dark background. Still very easy to read. Just for my quick little kind of glance at the watch, I feel like the G-Shock's easier for me to read, although the Timex is certainly larger. So you kind of may think differently. One thing I will say is that for me, it's a lot easier to press the glow function on the Casio, the G-Shock rather. It really just takes one finger, whereas the Timex I have to use 2, because the Indiglo is on the upper right hand corner on the side of the watch, so you have to kind of brace the watch with your thumb in order to press it. So it's fine. I mean, it's not a big thing to get all freaked out about, but the G-Shock button is on the front of the watch, so it's already braced with your wrist, and you don't need another finger in order to activate the glow function. So that's something to kind of think about. So that's the Lume shot for both of these watches, and I'm glad that I finally got it to focus on both of the times so you can see the legibility. So yeah, that was the Lume. Maybe a deal breaker for some people to have the kind of inverse negative effect on the Timex versus just the kind of the more the backlight on the G-Shock, but certainly wanted to just kind of show you those so you can make your own decision. So I'll be sending the Timex back to Amazon and continue to wear the G-Shock. I've been wearing it to play tennis in. I've been wearing it to work, and it's been great. It's a nice addition to my watch collection, and certainly hope to get many years of service out of this watch. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.